Widening means transforming a variable into its wider type. The widening of variable means the widening of its data type. Okay, so the, we will check for the integral type. Okay, so here byte, some primitive types we have: bytes, short, integer, long, float, and double. Okay, so these are in their widening sequence. Okay, means the short is widened type of byte, integer is widened type of short and byte, long is widened type of integer, float is widened type of long and all of its left, double is widened type of float and all its left. Okay, means a byte can be widened into either into short, integer, long, float, double. Suppose we have a byte type of primitive type, a variable of primitive byte type, then it can be widened into short, integer, long, float, or double. If we have a primitive type of short, it can be widened into integer, long, float, or double. If we have an integer type, primitive type of integer, it can be widened into long, float, or double. If we have a primitive type of long, it can be widened into float or double. If we have a primitive type of float, it can be widened into double. Means from left to right, these are in their widening sequence. Okay, so this is called widening for primitive types. Okay, but for reference type, the widening depends on inheritance. Okay, so we will check for the wrapper classes reference type. Okay, here the wrapper classes of all of our primitive types are byte, short, integer, long, float, double. But here something is different. Don't take as same as the primitive type, as I have seen that these all are in their widening sequence. But here is something is different. The widening of the reference type depends upon inheritance. Means there is a parent child relationship. Okay, here in reference type, byte, short, integer, long, float, and double, these all are in same hierarchy. This is a tree. This super parent is the object class. The child class of the object is number, and all the wrapper classes of primitive types are child class of this number class. Okay, means byte, short, integer, long, float, and double in reference type, these all are in same hierarchy. Okay, so here a byte cannot be widened into short, integer, long, float, and double because these all are in same hierarchy. So the widened type for all these wrapper classes is number. Means this any reference type of these all wrapper classes can be widened into either into number or into object. Any wrapper classes cannot be widened into its in its same hierarchy. Means a byte cannot be widened into short and so on. Okay, so the widening of reference type depends upon inheritance. Okay, and variable arguments. What are variable arguments? Variable arguments, the syntax for variable argument: suppose I want to create a variable arguments of type integer, then it will be created as this. There is a variable argument x of type integer. it is behave like an array. Okay, and there is rule, if we are passing any variable argument in a method as a parameter, then it must be the last parameter. Okay, I have a method display this variable argument. Suppose I have a float type of variable, a long type of variable, and I have a variable arguments of type A. Then this is the rule that I will pass this variable argument as the last parameter of the method. If I pass this as the first parameter or the second parameter, means if I do not pass any variable argument as the last parameter, then I will get a compile time error. I mean, this is the wrong way, because the rule says that the variable argument must be the last parameter of the method. Okay, so this is called variable arguments. Okay, now we have discussed widening with primitive type, widening with reference type, and variable arguments. Now the next thing is boxing and unboxing. Okay, so the boxing is means converting a primitive type into its reference type. Converting a primitive type into its reference type is called boxing, and its vice versa is called unboxing. Okay, converting from primitive to reference type means a primitive type of integer can be boxed into a wrapper type of integer. The primitive type of float can be reference boxed into float type of reference. The primitive type of long can be boxed into reference type of long. A primitive type of byte can be referenced into can be boxed into uh, reference type of byte, and so on. So this is called boxing. Integer to integer, float to float, long to long, byte to byte. Keep in your mind, from primitive to primitive, from primitive to primitive, this that was widening, and from primitive to a reference, this is boxing. Okay, so boxing means converting a primitive type to its reference type is called boxing, and its vice versa means converting a reference type to its primitive type, it is called unboxing. Okay, so we have discussed these three key points for understanding the rule behind that, how the compiler decides that which form of the method is to be invoked. We have discussed those all three key points. Those were widening, and this boxing, unboxing, and variable arguments. There are 3 to 4 rules which are followed by Java compiler for deciding the exact match. Okay, and those rule depends on these widening, boxing, unboxing, and variable argument. So now we will see those rules, and after that we will see some examples uh, in Eclipse. We will execute those examples in Eclipse, and we will discuss some possible interview questions asked by panel in interview room. First of all, we will see those rules which are followed by the compiler for deciding the exact match of the uh, overloaded method. Okay. Now see here some rules followed by the compiler for deciding exact match for the invoke method. Means these are some rules which are followed by the compiler when we invoke an overloaded method. Then on the basis of parameter list, compiler decides that which is the exact match for the invoked method. Now that method will be invoked by the compiler. So by following these rules, compiler will decide that this method is the exact match and it should be called. Okay. So what are rules? The first rule is widening wins over boxing and variable arguments. We have discussed these three key points: widening, boxing, unboxing, and variable arguments. Okay, so widening wins over boxing variable arguments. Okay, what does it mean? Suppose in a program we have a class. Okay, let me explain with the example. We have a class overloading test. Inside that we have a method display, which is okay. Here is something is body, and in main method we have an object I didn't create directly using here. Okay, so with the help of its object I am invoking this method. Okay, here the method is which method I have declared is accepting the reference type of long, but I am passing here a primitive type of integer. What I am passing integer, but the parameter of the declared method is long. Now what does it means by the first statement, widening wins over boxing and variable arguments? When our invoking method doesn't find the exact match for the method, means I passed integer type of primitive type of integer here, but there is no any such kind of method which is accepting primitive type of integer. Okay, in that case, when your invoking method means the compiler doesn't find the exact match for invoking method, the invoked method, sorry, which method is being invoked means the display. When the compiler doesn't find any exact match for this, then first of all it will find for its widen type. Okay, now we will see here in primitive type I am passing the primitive type. There is no any method I am passing primitive integer. There is no any display method with primitive integer. So what will it do according to the rule? First of all, it will find is there any method which has its parameter which is the widen type of primitive type of integer. This is the meaning of this line. First of all, it will check for its widen type. If it doesn't have, the class doesn't have any method with its exact match, then it will first of all it will find that is there any method which has any widen type of parameter of this method. What are widen type of primitive type of integer? We have seen here widen type of primitive type of integer are all of its right type, which all types are in its right hand side, means long, float. This is primitive type of long, not reference type. Long, float, double. If it doesn't have the exact match, it doesn't have any method with the parameter primitive type of integer, so it will find for first of all, this is the rule. First of all, it will find for its widen type. Is there any long or float or double? Okay, so it will find for is there any small long, small float or small double? No, there is no, means the first rule is fail. There is no means the widening wins over boxing and variable arguments means if the class doesn't have the exact match for invoked method, means we are passing an integer, primitive integer, and there is no any method with name display which is accepting a primitive type of integer, then it will find for widened type of. So now we have discussed all the key concepts for uh, overloading methods. So now we have discussed all the key concepts which are required for understanding the way in which the compiler decides the exact match for invoked method. Okay, those were widening, boxing, unboxing, and variable arguments. So there are some rules. By following these rules, the compiler decides that which method is to be invoked, which form of the method is to be invoked. Okay, so the first rule says widening wins over boxing and variable arguments. What does it mean? See here. We have a class overloading test. In this class, I have only one method display which is accepting a reference type of long as its parameter. Okay, inside that I have a main method. Inside that I am calling the display method. I'm really sorry I didn't create the object, I'm directly using it. But okay, so I am invoking the display method, and in at the time of invocation I am passing primitive integer as an argument. Okay, what I'm passing primitive type of integer. So when the compiler will compile this, okay, when the compiler will uh, execute this program, it will find that is there any method with the name of display which is accepting the primitive type of integer. Okay, so it will find in the class no, there is no any method. There is a method display, but it it doesn't accept primitive type of integer. It is accepting the reference type of long. Okay, so the first rule comes into view when it doesn't find, when the compiler doesn't find the exact match passing integer, primitive type of integer, but there is no any method accepting the primitive type of integer as a parameter. So what does it do? Actually, in this case there can be done three things: the widening, boxing, and variable arguments. So the first rule defines the sequence that if the compiler doesn't find the exact match, then first of all it will find any widened type. First of all it will perform widening. If in widening it doesn't find any exact match, then it will perform boxing. If it doesn't find any exact match in boxing, then it will perform variable argument. Okay, so widening wins over boxing and variable arguments means the widening is the supermost. Okay, widening is the supermost. The second rule says boxing wins over variable arguments and wins over variable arguments. So out in these three, widening, boxing, and variable arguments, first of all the exact match will be found by using widening. If if the compiler doesn't get any method by widening, then it will find for boxing. And last, if doesn't find an exact match by boxing, then it will find for variable arguments. Okay, so the combination of these two rules, the first one second says that if there is no any exact match for the invoked method, then First of all, the winding will be performed on the past parameter. Winding will be performed on the past parameter. Means the past parameter is primitive type of integer. Okay. So the widening of primitive type of integer means long, float, and double. This is the primitive type of long. Okay. So it will check any is there any method which is accepting long, float, or double as its parameter, and the method name must be display. So in our class there is no method which is accepting the primitive type of long or primitive type of float or primitive type of double. So there is no widening, then it will perform the boxing. Okay, widening is failed because we don't have any method accepting its widen type of its parameter. Now it will find for boxing. Okay, boxing can be performed from integer to integer. Okay, from integer to integer, from long to long, from float to float, and double to double. That is boxing. Okay, see here. Integer to integer, we are passing integer. See here an example. Okay, we are passing primitive type of integer, and we have long type of reference type. So integer cannot be boxed into long directly. Okay, there is some another rule for this. I'll discuss that later. Okay, but integer can be boxed either into integer or number or object, means into its parent type. Okay, so we will discuss here. We have discussed these two rules. The third rule says widening followed by boxing is allowed, and fourth rule says boxing followed by widening is not allowed. What does it mean? If it doesn't find the exact match, okay, in same example, widening is not possible because it's a primitive type of integer, and it cannot there is no any method accepting its widen type. Okay, so this is the integer and this is the reference type of long, but the boxing can be done from integer to integer only. Okay, so for boxing an integer to long directly, it is not possible. For this, first of all, it should boxed into integer. Okay, and then it is to be converted into long. Directly an integer cannot be boxed into long. Okay, so for this it is to be done in this way, from uh, primitive type of integer to its reference type and then to its long, but this is not possible. Why so? As we have discussed that reference type, the widening of the reference type is depends upon inheritance. These all are in same hierarchy, and integer cannot be converted into long. These all only can be converted into number or object. So if in this example instead of long there is a parameter of number or object type, then This integer will be accepted by number or object. Okay, this is the fourth rule, which says boxing followed by widening, sorry, widening followed by boxing. First, the widening is done from primitive type of integer to